Hey everyone, Nubkeks here, and in today's video we're taking a look at the Guardian Druid on the Shadowlands beta for World of Warcraft. This is actually the final tanking spec that we're looking at here in our big deep dive series of all of the specs on the beta. We've looked at, obviously then, most of the other classes and specs so far. We looked at Balance and Feral Druid over the last couple of days, if you want to check those out. We'll look at Resto Druid tomorrow, and then Rogue will be the final deep dive class. So yeah, this initial deep dive series coming to an end in the next week, but loads more Shadowlands content to come for you guys on the beta after that. And please do let me know in the comments, let me know on Patreon, everywhere, find me on Twitch, I'm going to be streaming stuff as well. Let me know what sort of content you guys will want to see. What sort of stuff do you want to know about Shadowlands, again, here in the beta, when we're in pre-patch and going into those first few weeks of launch. Do let me know. I'm happy to cover that sort of stuff for you guys. Without any further ado, though, let's do what we're here to do, and let's look at the Guardian Druid. Alright, here we are in-game, everyone. We're the Guardian Druid. It's a tanking class with attitude. You know, you've got the Demon Hunters. They've got their scars, and they're blind, and, oh, they're in so much pain. You've got, you know, the Death Knights putting all their runes on their blades, all very edgy. But you're just a bear. I mean, you gotta respect the hustle. You're just a big old bear. Gotta love it. Of course, we're gonna start out this video. We're gonna look at the sort of basic rotation of the Druid, just a core overview of how the spec actually plays for people who are gonna be new to the Guardian Druid, looking for a new spec. Going into Shadowlands. After that, again, you'll see all the timestamps down in the description. We'll have the sections on what's new for the Guardian Druid, new talents, Covenant abilities, Legendaries, all of that cool stuff is down there. So go pick the part that you are most intrigued about. And yeah, well, let's go. Let's check out the Guardian Druid. So I will say that the Guardian Druid it's very straightforward, right? It's actually a very straightforward tank, so that's kind of nice. It's relatively easy for me to explain. Much like the warrior specs, right? You're going to work off a rage mechanic. You're going to generate rage with your abilities and with your damage intake as well. And you're going to be able to translate that rage into active mitigation, into staying alive. Let's look at just your core abilities first, and then we'll drop your rage spenders, your core mitigation on top of it. First thing you have is Moonfire. So this has 40-yard range. It's instant cast. It's going to do 200 arcane damage and an additional 1,400 arcane damage over 16 seconds. So this is obviously something you're going to use to pull mobs from range, but it also does a good chunk of damage as well. It does really good damage, so you will actually maintain this on mobs as much as you can, as being a very nice little source of damage, an extra dot that does a good chunk of your damage. Then our main filler here is called Swipe. Let me show you. Moonbeam. There we go. Your main filler is called Swipe. This has no cooldown, and you're just gonna swipe. You'll hit up to 5 nearby enemies, doing 500 physical damage to all of them. So kind of nice that your little filler ability is actually a 5-target cleave, which is pretty damn cool. Thrash then is one of our main generators. This is very important. So this has a 5.6 second cooldown. That's affected by haste. It's kind of like a better swipe, really. You're going to strike all nearby enemies. Nearby, you'll do 520 bleed damage, which ignores armor. And you'll do an additional 100, about 200-ish bleed damage over 15 seconds. And you can actually stack this up to 3 times. So you can stack that bleed up to 3 times. It's not a massive bleed, but it will sort of add up. It will also generate 5 rage, and that does have some interactions with talents and things like that. And then our other big rage generator here is called Mangle. Let me show you the Thrash, actually. Thrash, you can see the debuff start stacking. We could swipe. That's a proc, don't worry about that. And you can see we stack up the Thrash. Mangle then, this again has a 5.6 second haste affected cooldown in this case. You will mangle the target for 700 physical damage. It will do 20% more damage to bleeding targets, and it will generate 10 rage. Again, this proc is a talent, don't worry about that. So that's Mangle. You also have another proc. Let me actually hit this for a while, see if we can trigger it, which is called Gore, where our Thrash, Swipe, Moonfire, and Maul will have a chance, 15% chance, there we go, we just got the proc, to reset the cooldown on Mangle and make it generate an additional 4 rage. Right, so just while you're thrashing, you're spinning, you're swiping everything, you're going to be getting that chance to reset Mangle, and it will be better. So yeah, that's again the main proc really that you're reacting to as that Guardian Druid, and that's most of it really. Then we go into our rage spenders, right? So the main one is Iron Fur. This is off the global cooldown, and it has a small cooldown itself, of course. This costs 40 rage, and you're going to increase your armor by about 769 for 7 seconds, and multiple uses of the ability can overlap. So by default, obviously bear form is giving you armor, right? It gives you a bunch of armor and stamina. We by default have 1,000 armor, which is giving us 28% damage reduction. If we pop our Iron Fur, we're going to go up to 41% damage reduction. Let me actually stack up a couple of Iron Furs here. So we'll just spam some abilities. Going to do our Maul. We'll do our Thrash. There we go. We'll do this. We're going to do some swipes. Going to Thrash now. Then we'll do our Mangle. Okay, great. And we've got loads and loads of rage. Great stuff. So we go. We'll do one Iron Fur. We can do another one. And you can see that actually overlaps, which is really cool. We can throw another one in on here as well. You can see that the stacks will fall off, right? It doesn't fully refresh the buff, but like each buff will overlap. It's like you can stack them up, and that's just fine. So that's how Iron Fur works. Then you do have Maul. This costs 40 rage. You'll hit the target for 1,200 physical damage. This is on the GCD, and this is how you'll spend your rage if you're like off tanking or something, right? What am I going to do with my rage if I'm not tanking? I don't need to do Iron Fur. I'll spend them on Maul. It's a little bit underwhelming. Definitely one of the weaker parts of the Druid kit. It's really just there as a rage dump when you don't need any defensives. And then Frenzied Regen, I guess, sort of counts as a rage spender, though it only costs 10 rage. But this is more about its cooldown. So it has a 36-second cooldown, reduced by haste, as you can see. So it's 34 seconds for me. There's 2 charges, and this will heal you for 24% of your health over 3 seconds, and it will increase the healing you receive by 20% while that is active. So yeah, again, this is more about managing the charges, but this is a fairly big part of your defensive toolkit as well. And that's really the core rotation of the Druid, of the Guardian Druid. Just mangle people, stack up your Thrashes, maintain Moonfire, fill in with swipes, use your Mangle whenever it procs, then spend your rage mostly on Iron Fur, use your Frenzied Regen when you need the heal, and spend excess rage if you don't need survivability. You can spend it on Maul for a small bit of extra damage. Big defensives that tie into this then, you've got a few big defensive abilities. Bark Skin has a 1-minute cooldown now. It's going to give you 20% damage reduction for 12 seconds, and you can use this while you're stunned, frozen, incapped, feared, or asleep, or in all shapes and forms. Survival Instincts now has a 3-minute cooldown, has 2 charges. This will reduce all damage you take by 50% for 6 seconds. And then you have a new cooldown called Berserk, which I'll cover in the What's New section. But anyway, you go Berserk for 15 seconds, reduce the cooldowns of Mangle, Thrash, Growl, and Frenzied Regen by 75%, and reduce the cost of Iron Fur by 50%. So that is not only an offensive cooldown to get more of those spells out, but it's also going to be a defensive boost because you'll generate more rage and you can get twice as many Iron Furs out, which is cool. We have some utility, obviously, that ties in with this as well. Some of these are talents and stuff, so I'll try not to cover the ones that are talents here. We'll go for like a baseline thing. So you have a your interrupt does have a little bit of range to it, kind of little charge effect on your interrupt. 15-second cooldown interrupt. You have Incap Roar, 30 seconds. AoE Incapacitate, which is nice for your stop. You've got your Taunt, of course. You do have Remove Corruption, which you can do in bear form, which will remove curse and poison effects from a friendly target, so that's good. Whoops, I did not mean to move that. You have Entangling Roots, which does take you out of bear form. It's a 1.6-second cast. Roots the target in place for 30 seconds on 35-yard range, so awkward to use it while you're actually tanking, right? Because it brings you out of bear form and you have to cast, so that's extremely risky. But you could use it to pre-pull, or if you're kiting away and you're not in range, you could use it for that. You obviously Dash, which will turn you into cat form, give you movement speed. You have Soothe. You can use Soothe in bear form. In fact, let me show you. So you got this thing. Moonfire, Soothe, Remove Corruption, Rebirth, usable in bear form. So Soothe is part of that. Rebirth is your battle res. So that's cool. You can bring someone back to life, which is nice. And Stampeding Roar, which is a 60% move speed buff for 8 seconds to all friendlies within 15 yards. That only has a 1-minute cooldown. For the Guardian Druids, which is half the cooldown for every other Druid. So that is really, really cool. And then you obviously have Hibernate as well, where you can put Beasts and Dragonkin to sleep. I think that is most of it. Again, like our passives, just that stuff. Oh, wait, dodge equal to crit strike chance. Your Mastery is giving you attack power, giving you maximum health and more healing received. You have the Thick Hide passive. Yeah, cast those, and that's a talent. So there you go. I think that's really the core gameplay of the Guardian Druid. Like I said, I think it's pretty straightforward, understandable, a simple, straightforward, but enjoyable tank spec. The big question then is what is new for the Guardian Druid in Shadowlands? And certainly at the baseline level, excluding like the Shadowlands specific extra stuff, there's not a whole ton of stuff, but there's a couple of nice bits in here. The first one that we have is Cyclone. It's now a baseline spell for all the Druid specs. This includes the Guardian Druid. This is a 1.6 second cast with a 20-yard range. You toss the enemy target into the air, disorienting them, but making them invulnerable for up to 6 seconds. Only one target can be affected by your Cyclone at a time. So obviously if you ever played PvP against Druids, right, in Arena, you'd be very familiar with Cyclone. This is now there for all PvE classes. One definite downside for sure, which I hope they change, is that you cannot, this takes you out of bear form to cast it. So I really don't see you using this all that much as the Guardian Druid. It's like, if you're ever in a fight with something, I don't really think you're going to be able to go and cast. It's kind of like Entangling Roots in that sense. Like whenever you could weave in Entangling Roots is maybe when you could do a Cyclone, but it's going to be awkward to actually use this as the tank. Very, very awkward. Certainly with Entangling Roots, you could use that maybe to pre-pull a pack in like some sort of weird way where you want to isolate out one mob, like maybe with the new Inspiring affix for Mythic Plus. Cyclones only last 6 seconds. I don't really know if that's as much of a thing. So that's something to be concerned about. I hope that they might just add it into maybe to your Ursine added passive. I think that would be fine. That would let you use Cyclone in bear form. And they could do something similar for Feral Druids. That was a problem for them as well. Obviously, Balanced Druids and Resto Druids being ranged can get away with this. But it kind of sucks for the melee Druid specs not to be able to cast this in their forms. That's my quick thought on that. Then something that is very nice, Berserk is a new cooldown for the Guardian Druid. A 3-minute cooldown, you go Berserk for 15 seconds, reduce the cooldowns of Mangle, Thrash, Growl, and Frenzied Regen by 75%, and the cost of Iron Fur by 50%. So this basically brings most of them like down. Like Mangle basically becomes the GCD, Thrash basically becomes the GCD, Frenzied Regen will be a bit slower. What's it? Growl is going to be pretty close to the GCD, like 2 GCDs on your taunt, which is cool. So yeah, this is definitely intriguing. It's an intriguing one. It's going to give you a nice boost of damage. You're going to be able to stack up Thrash to its maximum of 3 stacks very quickly. You're going to be able to spam Mangle instead of spamming Swipe for a lot more rage regen. You can obviously taunt things very quickly, which is kind of useful. Ooh. And yeah, it will also... yeah, reducing the cost of Iron Fur, half the cost of Iron Fur, you'll be able to spam out way more Iron Furs, which is nice. One concern, obviously Frenzied Regen being reduced by 75% is a big deal as well, because that's a long cooldown. One concern for sure is that Frenzied Regen is still on the GCD. Now, I'm mentioning this because Blizzard just did, I'm going to do a video on this today as well, a lot of changes to abilities on the GCD. They only looked at the burst cooldown. So, for example, Berserk is not on the global cooldown. It might be nice. This would be really good if they removed Frenzied Regen from the GCD. I will say it's a little bit awkward right now that it is still on the GCD. In Berserk, you'll spend quite a few of those GCDs right now casting the Frenzied Regen, not to overcap it, and to get that value out, which kind of sucks because you can't just spam out Mangle, which would be more preferable. Spamming Mangles and Iron Furs, that'd be cool. But yeah, this is awesome as a new little cooldown to have in. 15 seconds every 3 minutes, not the biggest deal in a sense. It's quite a long cooldown, but it's a powerful enough cooldown, and this does tie in well with some Legendaries and Conduits and stuff like that we'll look at in a little bit. In terms of then some other little baseline changes here, you've got some nice perks to your defensives. I'll actually touch on maybe the more questionable one first, which is, as you can see, Frenzied Regen. This in BFA was healing you for 32% of your health over 3 seconds. That's been lowered down to 24% of your health, so you're losing an 8% max health heal. However, you now have the benefit that it will increase all healing that you receive by 20%. Which should actually affect itself, right? It should actually affect itself and give it like an extra 5%-ish or so of healing. And then obviously it's going to work well for your healer. I mean, it's a short period, only 3 seconds uptime, but getting more healing in that time frame, that should add up to, it should probably be at least about as much healing as it was before, possibly even more. But just be aware that you're a little bit more reliant on your healer. Certainly has very good synergies with healers with a lot of heal over time effects. That's going to give a nice little perk. So there you go. That's the Frenzied Regen change. Good and bad sides to it, I would say. A couple of things that have just very positive sides. Bark Skin is now a 1-minute cooldown, so it's a 1-minute defensive cooldown. Lasts for 12 seconds, gives you 20% damage reduction. And Survival Instincts is now a 3-minute cooldown with 2 charges, which is your 50% damage reduction for 6 seconds. So I think the cooldowns on both of these have gone down, that's obviously great. So your defensive CDs are better, and now you've got Berserk as well as a defensive CD. So that's pretty nice. Nice little perks there for the Guardian Druid. For your leveling perks as the Guardian Druid, at level 52, you're going to get Regrowth rank 2, which is going to make your Regrowth have a 40% increased crit chance when the target is already affected by Regrowth. It's not super crazy useful as the Guardian Druid. Like, you can use it when you're doing a bit of kiting for a bit of self-healing, but certainly not something you're going to be able to spam on yourself in combat in bear form when you're actually fighting mobs in melee. Frenzied Regen rank 2 is what you get at level 54, so that's the effect that gives you the 20% increased healing while Frenzied Regen is active. That you get at level 54. You get Entangling Roots rank 2 at level 56, which is going to let your Entangling Roots take 20% more damage before they break, which is kind of nice, actually. And then you're going to get Berserk rank 2 at level 58. So by default, you'll see this when you actually play your Guardian in the pre-patch, and when you start leveling in Shadowlands, you're only going to get a 50% cooldown reduction on Mangle, Thrash, Growl, and Frenzied Regen. You get the extra 25% at level 58, so that's how that works. Your talent tree then has seen a few little tweaks and changes as well. So in level 25, Ursol's Vortex is gone. And as you'll see down here somewhere, one of these, Typhoon is gone as well. We'll cover those in the Affinity section. That's where they've moved. But in place of Ursol's Vortex, you do have Renewal. So Renewal is a 1.5 minute cooldown that instantly heals you for 30% of your maximum health. And you can use this in bear form, which is, you know, it's kind of decent-ish, I guess, defensive cooldown. Like, it's something. However, you do have to give up Wild Charge for that. Or Tiger's Dash, and I think generally speaking, you're still probably leaning towards that Wild Charge a bit more to get, you know, your charge effect for Guardian. It's just awesome. Or being able to, you know, do some extra fun movement stuff based off your other shapeshift forms. The affinities then, this is a really big change to this tier. So they've actually now included a big crowd control, big utility effect into each of the affinity forms. So Balanced Affinity is now going to give you Typhoon on top of Moonkin form and those balance spells. Feral Affinity is going to give you Maim, which is a combo point spender that does a stun, a single target stun with combo points up to 5 seconds. That's with the Feral Affinity. And then the Restoration Affinity is going to give you Ursol's Vortex on top of the healing spells. And obviously Sarah's Gift and Feline Swiftness and blah, blah, blah. So certainly an interesting change. Definitely an interesting change. One of the big things is you will not then, as a Guardian Druid, be able to combo, which you could with previous talent trees. You could combo Ursol's Vortex and Typhoon by getting them on your different talent tiers. I think Ursol's Vortex was here and Typhoon was here. So you're not going to be able to do that anymore. However, at the same time, it's not necessarily the end of the world, because now you will have Wild Charge and probably go Resto Affinity for Ursol's Vortex. That's a pretty decent combination. That's not too bad. And you can really sort of choose which one you want as well. It incentivizes the affinities a bit more. I'd say Cat Form, Feral Affinity is probably the weakest one. Maim isn't great. It's more so if you want to go into Cat Form to do some damage. In like a two tank situation, when your co-tank taunts, you can go Cat Form and do some nice DPS. That's more the appeal of Feral Affinity, I think. But for more of your play, I think, you know, going for Typhoon or going for Ursol's Vortex are some of those big attractions. I will point out very quickly as well that Swiftment has been changed too. It now is only a 15-second cooldown. This affects all the Druid specs, of course. But it consumes a Regrowth, Wild Growth, or Rejuvenation effect to instantly heal an ally for about 8,000. So if you want to actually use this to heal yourself, it's going to cost you really 2 GCDs. You'd have to, number one, put a Regrowth, Wild Growth, or Rejuve on yourself. So let's say Regrowth by default. You'd have to run out. You'll have to, you know, put one of these on yourself. So Regrowth yourself, and then you'd have to do the Swiftmend. So that's going to cost you, and then go back into bear form. That's quite a few GCDs. It will still be useful for a nice little chunk of healing while you're kiting. But I think before you probably could have woven in a Swiftmend and then swap back into bear form, like between boss melee attacks or something. You might be able to pull that off. That's not really going to be an option now because it does take more GCD. So just to be aware of that. Level 35 then, Heart of the Wild, new talent, pretty damn exciting, a returning talent. 5-minute cooldown. Abilities associated with your chosen affinity are substantially empowered for 45 seconds. Pretty awesome. So you're going to be able to really swap up your role periodically. So for Resto, it's going to make your Resto spells heal for 30% more and lower their mana cost by 50%. In Feral Affinity, it's going to increase the damage of your Feral abilities by 30%, and critical strikes with attacks that generate combo points will generate additional combo points. For Balance Affinity, it will, hey, there's Typhoon. It will increase the damage of your balance abilities by 30% and make Star Surge an instant cast. This one is pretty damn cool for sure. I will say in dungeon tanking, I really don't see this being all that much use. It would have to be a very, very niche circumstance. So something like, if you think about BFA, the last boss in the Temple of Sethralis, you could use Resto Affinity with Heart of the Wilds to be pretty cool there. But most of the time, you know, you need to be tanking. You need to be in bear form. You can't swap into these forms all that often. Certainly, I would say in a raid situation, it could be kind of cool if you've got long periods of tank swaps where you're not actually actively tanking something. It could be kind of cool to pop Heart of the Wild and really go to town as a cat and do loads of damage, or go to town as the big chicken and again do lots of damage. There's some cool options there, or really fill in as a healer. Interesting options. Certainly, I think this is more of a raiding talent for the most part. Perhaps PvP, if you PvP much as a Guardian Druid, like maybe some flag carrying. You could do some interesting, funny stuff with that. So it's a cool option. And, you know, Mass Entangle and Mighty Bash aren't amazing. So I think you're going to have the option to pick that one up fairly often if you want to. It's cool. Ties in a lot with the Legendaries. I'll come back to those. That'll be what we look at after the Covenant abilities. Over in level 40 then, Incarnation Guardian of Ursoc. This has a sort of a new effect alongside Berserk. So Berserk, to reiterate, is giving you a 15-second buff. That's going to reduce the cooldowns of Mangle, Thrash, Growl, Frenzied Regen by 75% and half the cost of Iron Fur. Incarnation Guardian of Ursoc now replaces and improves Berserk. It's going to give you all of the benefits of Berserk, but it's also, on top of that, going to let your Mangle hit 3 additional targets. Or sorry, hit up to 3 targets. So you hit 3 targets with your Mangle. It's going to give you an additional 30% maximum health, and it lasts for twice the duration. So instead of getting a 15-second buff of Berserk, you get 30 seconds of Berserk. This one is pretty sick, actually, I have to say. I think this one is very cool. This becomes an extremely potent cooldown. You're getting a massive defensive benefit out of it with the maximum health, just the more rage regen, more rage gen, and the half-cost Iron Furs. So that's awesome. Your Mangle has no cooldown and hits 3 targets. Pretty awesome. And lasting for 30 seconds. You become like the Uber Bear for 30 seconds every 3 minutes, which is awesome. It ties in well with the Venthyr Covenant, and there is one legendary that should tie in well too, though it doesn't work with the Incarnation right now. It only works with Berserk, which is probably a bit of a bug. I don't think they've quite updated a lot of the spells and things like that to work with Guardian with the Incarnation instead of just the baseline Berserk, because they just added in the baseline Berserk recently. So I expect that to change, but I think this talent looks really, really good to really emphasize that big power spike of being the Uber Bear every 3 minutes. At level 45, another really nice change. Well, actually not a change, but Survival of the Fittest now is really good with the reduced cooldown. So because Barkskin is now a 1 minute cooldown, this makes Barkskin a 40-second cooldown, which is fantastic. It makes Survival Instincts a 2 minute recharge. So Survival of the Fittest, I think, is looking really, really nice, considering the already reduced cooldowns of these. These become very attractive short CDs now with this talent, which is really nice. And then finally at level 50, I think Rend and Tear. Rend and Tear, the Doom reference, has got a bit of a rewording. I think it's still the same though, but Pulverize has got new functionality. So this will consume 2 stacks of your Thrash on the target to do 1,300 or 400 or so physical damage. This now is a single target debuff though that reduces the damage the target does to you by 20% for 10 seconds. This used to be this used to do the same effect, but it reduced all damage that you took, I think, or all physical damage you took by 9%. So it was affecting everything in AoE. This is now really a purely single target thing. So I think that's pretty interesting. They've made this very much something you're going to take on maybe Tyrannical Weeks and Mythic Plus. This could be pretty good. Or if you're doing a dungeon with some really difficult mini bosses, whatever. Or for single target raid fights, this could be really good, where you're going to get that 20% damage reduction for 10 seconds every 30 seconds. Kind of nifty. So I like the rework on this. I think it makes sense. We need to stack up a couple of Thrashes to show this, so let's do that. Put our stuff on here. Here we go. Here comes our next Thrash. Now we can Pulverize. Bam, we Pulverize, and I guess it's the debuff on them. Yeah, it's a debuff on that target. They're going to do 20% reduced damage to the Druid. So single target. I like the rework, actually. You know, you've got Rend and Tear, which is more about constant damage reduction in AoE. Lunar Beam is sort of more burst damage and healing, a bit of a weird one. And then Pulverize for more single targets. So that's a nice little tweak, I think, to how that works. For your Covenant abilities then, as a Guardian Druid, let's look at the Kyrian one first. It's the most complicated one. I'll get it out of the way first, right? Summon Steward, though, is a signature ability. Pretty nice. You're going to get your little Steward buddy. He'll come over. He'll give you a Phial of Serenity. This is an additional healing consumable just on top of all the other healing consumables you can have, like health bots, health stones, blah, blah, blah. This restores 20% health and removes all diseases, poisons, curses, and bleeds affecting you. Obviously, you can dispel yourself for curses and poisons already. This is additionally getting rid of, though, diseases and bleeds. So that's pretty nice. There's a lot of those effects floating around and good for PvP as well. And of course, you know, if your healer can't remove poisons and curses, you could use this to save someone else in your group potentially and save yourself then with the File of Serenity. So I think this is a pretty nice one for sure. Then this is where things get a little more complicated. This is called Kindred Spirits, right? This is your Covenant ability for the Druids. It has a 2.3-second cast where you form a bond with an ally. I think it lasts like an hour or something. And then it becomes a new ability, which is on the GCD, has a 1-minute cooldown, will give you a 10-second buff that affects both you and your chosen partner based off of your roles, whether you're a tank, healer, or DPS. So you, as the tank, will give your partner the Kindred Protection benefit. So when you pop, let's say I pop this on my healer, in the Mythic Plus dungeon, when my healer's in danger, I can activate this, right? Which is going for 10 seconds. I will take 40% of the damage they take will go to me as the Guardian Druid, unless I fall below 20% health. So it's kind of like a blessing of sacrifice that I can give to whoever I want in my party, in my raid. About every 1 minute I can activate that. What are you going to get in return then as the Guardian Druid? Well, you're going to get a number of things. If they are a tank, so you can put this on your tanking partner, you'll get the same benefit. You get the tanking benefit. So they will take 40% of the damage that you take. So that's kind of cool. I mean, certainly actually one thing to consider, this is actually quite nice for your co-tank in a raid. Again, if you got those longer tank swaps, if you're not in any danger whatsoever, you could pop this when they're tanking and you could just take 40% of the damage they're going to take. It's like an extra defensive to give to them. Or likewise, you can pop it on your co-tank and in the same situation where they're off tanking and you're in danger, you can pop this and make them take 40% of the damage that you're taking. So that could be a cool little tank defensive worth mentioning. Sorry, back to the other stuff though. So that's the tank part. For the healers, if you put this on a healer, the healer is going to give you the benefit. It's kind of like a beacon of light for Holy Paladins, where 30% of the healing that they do will go as an additional bonus to you. So you're going to, whatever healing that they're doing, all the HPS they're pumping out, 30% of that as a bonus goes to you as the Guardian Druid. So you get to pop that, again, in Mythic Plus, really, really nice. In raids could even be nice as well. Pop that and suddenly get a whole bunch of extra healing coming your way. Pretty cool. And then finally, if they are a damage dealer, you will make your damage dealer give you an absorb shield equal to 30% of the damage that they are going to do. So that's, again, also pretty cool for a bit of survivability. So yeah, I think some interesting uses for this one. You know, you really have to choose what sort of role you want to put it on, who makes the most sense, and blah, blah, blah. I like it. I think it's pretty good. Again, with the 1 minute cooldown, if you're putting it on a damage dealer, you're really considering, okay, like which damage dealer makes the most sense here to pop this on. I certainly think the most interesting use of this will certainly be in the raid, being able to put this on a co-tank and exploiting that through some boss swap stuff. I think that's very intriguing for sure. There is a conduit that makes this better called Deep Allegiance that lowers the empowerment effect by 10%. That goes up to about 25% cooldown reduction. So in other words, this would become a 45-second cooldown reduction. So again, that's a nice defensive to share with a tank in raid on a 45-second cooldown. Or, again, in particular, I would say in Mythic Plus, you could use this to get an Absorb Shield out of something that bursts every 45 seconds. So, like, if you're running Mythic Plus with an Arcane Mage that does, like, a Rune of Power, Touch the Magi, big burst every 45 seconds, you're kind of watching him going, he's going to burst. Okay, cool. I'm going to pop my Kindred Spirits. I'm getting a big Absorb Shield. Happy days. And if he pulls aggro with all that burst damage, well, I'm going to take 40% of the damage that he's taking. So, he'll stay a bit more alive. That sort of thing, right? So, a bit of usefulness there. So that's cool. Right, that's Kindred Spirits. Looking at the Night Fae. Oh, actually, one thing. You can use this on your own. I totally forgot. If you do this on yourself when you're alone, you can use this. It becomes Lone Empowerment, which is going to give you 10% damage reduction for 10 seconds. So it is useful on your own. Not as useful, but you can use it on your own. Sorry, just to point that out. Right, for the Night Fae, their signature ability is Soul Shape. It's a 1.5 minute cooldown. You activate it, you become a Vulpin, gaining 50% movement speed and getting this Flicker ability. So it instantly activates Flicker when you do the spell, of course. And then you can reactivate it every 4 seconds for a 15-yard teleport. Which is cool, right? Really, really cool. It lasts indefinitely in a rest area like that, but in combat, it's going to last for 12 seconds. It will pull you out of bear form, which is kind of a button. In fact, I'm pretty sure it does. I'm pretty sure it does properly shapeshift you out. So if I cancel out, it brings me back in human form, which is a bit clunky. So you might want to cancel out of it by actually activating bear form instead, rather than just canceling the buff manually like I did there. Wait, hang on. Let me double check that this is how it works. Yeah, so like you'd want to actually activate bear form to get out of that. Kind of a bummer that you can't have the effect up while you're in bear form. That's definitely a concern for some of the mobility stuff, but it's still a cool little movement spell. Although you have lots of those, to be fair, like with dash, etc., as the Guardian Druid. The Covenant ability then for Druids is Convoke the Spirits. This did just get nerfed last night. It got nerfed. So this is now a 2-minute cooldown. You channel for 4 seconds and you will do 12 Druid spells over those 4 seconds. This used to be 16. It's now 12, which makes me sad. Because I love this. I love this. It was a great Covenant ability. We'll see how good it is now after the nerf. But yeah, we can all be sad together because this is a bummer. Anyway, the spells you will cast, you'll do Mangles, Iron Furs, Moonfires, Rats, Regrowths, Rejuvenations, Rakes, and Thrashes on appropriate nearby targets favoring your current shapeshift form. So in the bear, let's just do it here. Let's go for it. Convoke the Spirits, here we go. And you can actually move while you're doing this. I didn't realize that because I'm an idiot. But yeah, as you can see, it fully stacked up the Thrash. We got a Regrowth on ourselves. We got an Iron Fur out of it. We actually aggroed these guys as well with some Moonfires. So we got some random stuff out of that. Obviously, you're getting a bunch of Rage generation as well. That just did about, it did about 16,000 damage for us there with the Thrashes. We got a few Moonfires out. We did like 4 Thrashes. We got 3 Mangles out of that. It actually put up Rake as well. I missed that, but it did cast a Rake dot on somebody. Got a 1 Wrath out of it. Yeah, so yeah, you get some of those spells out. And it's a bummer that they did nerf it. I hope that they undo that nerf. I really do. We'll have to see. But anyway, it's kind of nice, right? Certainly getting Iron Fur out of it for free is cool. Getting your healing spell on you is cool. Certainly that enables you to pop a Swift Mend relatively easily as well. If you're going for Resto Affinity, you can just, pop that Swift Mend and go straight back into bear form by consuming the heal that you're going to get on yourself. But it's a nice bit of burst damage, a little bit of burst survivability. So kind of nifty. The conduit for this is called Conflicts of Elements. While channeling Convoke the Spirits, your damage and healing are increased by 12%. That goes up to 28%. More damage and healing while you are channeling. Kind of cool. So there you go, Convoke the Spirits. Bit sad that it was nerfed, but it's still pretty awesome. The next one here is the Venthyr. Their signature ability is called Door of Shadows. This is a 1-minute cooldown, 1.5 second cast, 35-yard range teleport. Pick where you want to go and teleport over there. As you see, you can cast this as a bear, so your nightmares of the teleporting bear are real. It is in the game. There you go. Ravenous Frenzy, then, is a 3-minute cooldown. For 20 seconds, Druid spells you cast increase your damage, healing, and haste by 2%, stacking up. And if you spend 1.5 seconds idle, the frenzy overcomes you, consuming 3% of your health per stack and stunning you for 1 second and ending. So this gets pretty dangerous. It's got a big negative effect, which is worrying. The good news is, well, number one, this is now off the GCD as of last night. It's off GCD, which is nice. I will very quickly just touch on very quickly. You do have a legendary called Legacy of the Sleeper, which is going to make Berserk give you immunity to crowd control, right? Immunity to effects that cause loss of control of your character. So that is nice because that sort of ensures if you run that legendary that you will never trigger the negative effect of this because you won't be crowd controlled. You can always do stuff, so you'll never have the idle thing happen. You can't get stunned by a mob in Mythic Plus with that legendary. If you're syncing this up with Berserk, which you surely will. You surely will sync this up with Berserk. So that is something to bear in mind. So, okay, this is a 20-second buff on 3-minute cooldown. Berserk's 15-second buff on 3-minute cooldown. You really will sync these together. It just makes sense. Right now, the incarnation thing doesn't work with this Legacy of the Sleeper thing. Where is it? Legacy of the Sleeper. But presumably when it does, you have the potential here for an absolutely nutty triple cooldown stack. Essentially, where you're getting the baseline benefits of Berserk, you're also getting the benefits of Incarnation, where it lasts for 30 seconds, your Mangle's hitting 3 targets, and then you can stack that with Legacy of the Sleeper, where you're going to do more damage, get Leech, and be immune to loss of crowd control effects. That could be pretty cool, on top of all that stacking damage, haste, and healing. Again, the legend, the mythical legend of the Uber Bear is real with the Venthyr, so I think this has a good synergy with Berserk. It's pretty cool. So really stacking up your Berserk and hopefully the Incarnation cooldown to do absolutely tons of damage and be super duper tanky. Pretty intriguing one there to be the 3-minute Uber Bear. That's what you want. The Covenant conduit for this is called Endless Thirst. Ravenous Frenzy will also increase your crit chance by 2% per stack. That goes up to about 4.8% per stack. You know what? Let me actually show you. Let us be the Uber Bear. Let's do it. So you know what? We're gonna charge in here. We'll just like do a little basic rotation here. There we go. Oh god, we're in danger. Let's go. Uber Bear activated. We're now in our incarnation. We're gonna activate our thing in the last few seconds of this. Like, no real worries there. Okay, it's time. The Uber Bear, let's go. And we're just mashing our mangles. It's gonna mash our iron first. See how many we can get up here. Absolutely loads. We'll do a frenzied regen. All right, cool. Frenzied regen is rolling. We've got 11 stacks. Okay, cool. The Uber Bear is here, boys. Uber Bear is here. Still a little bit to go. We actually got up to 17, 18 stacks right there. Uber Bear strikes. Super, super, super fun. Not the perfect rotation, but I think quite fun. Our Mangle doing tons of damage. That, again, is hitting 3 targets with Incarnation. So 17 stacks of that. That was right there, giving us like 34% more damage, healing, and haste, which is cool. And with the Conduit, 17 stacks would have been giving us at the end of that 34% a crit chance, which is pretty nice, right? So I think that's a ton of fun. Really cool, really cool. For the Necrolords then, the final Covenant here to look at. We might not work because we're in combat. Let's see. I love that we still have our Lone Spirit thing happen as well. But your signature ability as these dudes, the Necrolords, is Fleshcraft. You channel for 4 seconds to form a shield of flesh and bone that will absorb damage equal to 20% of your maximum health for 2 minutes. So dangerous as a tank to channel this in combat because you can't. It's not one of those nice channels, like you can't block and parry and stuff while you're channeling. So just watch out for that. You can't dodge. If you channel it near a corpse, though, it will become even more powerful. Depending on how many corpses there are and how powerful the enemies are, you get up to 50% max health shield, which is pretty cool. Like right now, it's giving me a 7,000 shield. I could channel that and it would be like almost like 20,000 shield. Pretty nuts. You got a lot of max health as a Guardian Druid. So certainly you could use this between mob packs in Mythic Plus. I love that it covers our face. It's like your butt is entirely unprotected by the Necrolord shield here. No butt protection. It's top loaded, front loaded. But yeah, like in Mythic Plus, you know, you're going into a difficult boss fight, or you're going to do a difficult pull. You're going to group up lots of mobs for some big AoE pull. You could pop Fleshcraft on after killing the previous pack, get that big 50% HP shield, which is going to help you gather up all that stuff, which is, I think, pretty nifty, pretty cool. The Covenant ability for Druids then is Adaptive Swarm. A 25-second cooldown. You command a swarm that will heal for 1,500 or do 1,500 damage over 12 seconds to a target. It will increase the effectiveness of your periodic effects on them by 20%. And when it expires, it will jump to a target within 25 yards, alternating between friend and foe up to 3 times. So you know, put it on an enemy, it will jump to a friend, jump to an enemy, jump to a friend. So you'll get, it will do two of the heals, 2 heal over times and 2 damage over times, presuming there's enough targets for it to go to. So if I show this to you here, it's going to go over there, bounce over there, pretty nice. Then it will bounce to me, then it'll bounce to another enemy, and you get a couple of these out at a time. I think this one is actually really nice for the Guardian Druid. It's going to do some consistent damage for you. And it's also going to do some consistent healing for you. Kind of works well with the new Frenzied Regen as well, where like this heal over time is going to heal me a little bit more thanks to the Frenzied Regen, which is cool. And obviously any periodic effects that I put on myself, so if I do apply like a rejuve or a regrowth or something, that's going to heal me for more. Those hots will heal me for more while Adaptive Swarm is on, which is nice. Oh, sorry, I can actually get a second one out. So you can see, you can have 2 of these out at a time, though the first one will expire. They won't be permanently out together, but you can have a couple of these out at a time, which is nice. And the nice thing is, a lot of your damage does come from your dots as a Guardian Druid. Like your Thrash dot is a little bit of damage, and certainly your Moonfire is a lot of damage. If you go for Galactic Guardian as well, I guess this doesn't really affect your... it's not going to affect the instant damage, actually, so that won't really matter. But your Moonfire is quite a bit of damage. Thrash is a bit of damage, so it's not too bad. It's going to add up to a decent little chunk of extra DPS for you. Also a decent chunk of extra survivability for you. So I think it's relatively simple, straightforward. Just press the button when you want. It mixes up your rotation a little bit. It's going to do some nice damage, nice healing. I think it's a good, like, very short-term sort of little benefit that's just sort of rolling as part of your core rotation. The Covenant conduit for this is Evolved Swarm, where it will increase periodic effects by additional 6%. That scales up to 14% more additional effectiveness. Again, pretty awesome. So yeah, there you are. That is the... that's the Guardian Druid. I think you've got really good selection, actually. I think all of these Covenant abilities look great in their own way for the Guardian Druid. The Necrolords is going to provide a core part of your combat rotation. It's because you're got quite a lot of dots as a Guardian Druid, it's going to do a decent chunk of damage by itself, and it's going to do a nice little bit of extra survivability, a little bit of extra healing for you. So I think a pleasant effect that's just kind of constantly rolling. Venthyr is very much the opposite. Venthyr is the big 3-minute CD that you're going to sync up with your Berserk, with your Incarnation, maybe the Legacy of the Sleeper Legendary, the Legend of the 3-minute Uber Bear, the most terrifying tank in the whole game. Every 3 minutes, that's what you're going to get with the Venthyr. With the Night Fae, you're going to get Convoke the Spirits. Sadly, just got nerfed, but I think it's still pretty awesome. A big 2-minute burst cooldown. It's going to do some burst damage. It's going to give you some burst survivability, some burst healing. I think that one is still pretty fun. And then you got Kindred Spirits, which is going to emphasize more of that utility, more of that supportive aspect. You know, are you going to put it on a tank? Are you going to put it on a damage dealer? Are you going to put it on a healer? Like, what's your choice there? Where is it going? And you're going to get different benefits depending on which role you put it on. Or, of course, you're going to give that sort of blessing of sacrifice type effect to the teammate that you put it on. So either your co-tank in the raid for a pretty interesting effect, or, you know, one of your teammates in Mythic Plus that maybe lacks survivability, you can help them stay alive through fixating mobs, things like that. Or in PvP, you know, pop it on one of your teammates to make sure that they're going to be a bit more survivable, or pop it on a DPS or a healer. So you get the Beacon of Light effect, you get more healing, you get an Absorb Shield, whatever. Pretty cool, very interesting, flexible, versatile. So yeah, great choices all around, I think, for the Guardian Druid. For your legendaries then, for Guardian, there are 4 general legendaries for all the Druid specs, so you get to use those. And there are 4 Guardian specific legendaries as well. Of course, at the start of Shadowlands, you get to choose 1 legendary to wear at a time. I already mentioned Legacy of the Sleeper briefly because I kind of had to with the Venthyr thing, and Incarnation, etc. But we'll cover these all properly in detail now. The first one here is Circle of Life and Death. Your damage over time effects deal their damage in 25% less time, and your healing over time effects in 15% less time. I think this one's not too bad. Obviously, this has a very good synergy with Feral Affinity. If you want to use Feral Affinity for some damage, like as an off tank, that's going to be pretty nifty. But even so, your damage over time is relatively decent with Moonfire and Thrash as a Guardian Druid, so that could help a little bit. Healing over time, you don't have a ton, but if you are going to be kiting and healing yourself a bit, could be okay as well. Has pretty good synergy, I would say, with the Necrolord Covenant, which is boosting up your periodic effects, so it could be an okay option. The next one is Draft of Deep Focus. When Moonfire, Rake, Rip, or Rejuvenation are on a single target, their effects are increased by 30%. I really feel like this is more for the Cat Druid, but certainly, again, this also works well with Feral Affinity. You, obviously, as the Bear, can apply Moonfire, and then the Cat form can apply the Rake and Rip. Certainly, Rake and Rip are going to be applied, well, not the Rip, you have to go Feral Affinity to get Rip, but the Rake will be applied by your Convoke the Spirits if you go with, most likely, the Rake will be applied by the Night Fae Covenant, Convoke the Spirits, so that could get a bit of benefit there. Yeah, I think this is more of a cat weaving thing, though, where you can, for sure, get Rake and Rip up, and it could be a good source of damage, but a little bit questionable, I feel, as a Bear, though, a little bit questionable. The other two, then, are really, really good. So the first one here is like Kara's Fleeting Glimpse. This is awesome. Every 45 seconds while in combat, cast a spell based on your form. So while you're in no form, you're going to do a Wild Growth. While you're in cat form, it'll do a Primal Wrath, which is AoE Rip. Puts Rip on everything in AoE. For you in bear form, it's going to do Bark Skin, which is a 20% damage reduction. For 12 seconds. Moonkin form will do Starfall, which is massive AoE damage. If you go into travel form, it will do a Stampeding Roar. So the wonderful thing about this is you will most likely get an add-on, a weak aura, which will track this for you. It'll warn you when it's going to come up, and then you can choose what form to be in when it goes off, for some really awesome effects. So I think in particular, Balance Affinity, if you go with Balance Affinity, Starfall is going to be a truckload of damage in AoE, like a ton of damage in AoE. If you don't have Moonkin form, Cat form, Primal Wrath is going to be, again, another really good source of AoE damage. If your team is in danger, you could pop into just human form and get a Wild Growth on your whole party in Mythic Plus. That could be kind of good. Or, of course, just by default, more Bark Skins. You know, more 20% damage reduction for 12 seconds. That's not too bad either. I can take a free Bark Skin. That's going to be fine. So I just love, or again, going to travel form. You know, if 1 minute Stampeding Roar isn't enough, you can get even more Stampeding Roars with this one. I just love the utility of it. I think it's fantastic, and it has interesting gameplay that emphasizes shapeshifting. Similarly, this one, also really awesome. The Oath of the Elder Druid. It has a passive effect that is going to increase the effectiveness of Thick Hide, Astral Influence, Feline Swiftness, or Ysera's Gift by 75%. So Thick Hide is your default thing over here that's going to give you 6% damage reduction. Astral Influence increases the range of all your spells by 3 yards. Feline Swiftness is 15% move speed. Ysera's Gift is 3% max health healed every 5 seconds. If we pop this bad boy on right here, we're going to jump up to 10% passive damage reduction. So just a constant 4% damage reduction all the time for free. Wonderful. Astral Influence will give us 5 yards extra range on spells instead of 3. Feral Affinity gives us 26% move speed instead of 15. And Restoration Affinity is going to give us 5% max health healing every 5 seconds instead of 3%. All of those are fantastic. So again, presuming you'll probably be doing Resto Affinity, that's an extra 2% max health healed every 5 seconds and a passive 4% damage reduction. That's pretty good by itself. But on top of that, when you shift into your Affinity's form, you gain Heart of the Wild for 10 seconds and you can get that proc once every 1 minute. So this is badass. So again, in Mythic Plus, you could use this. In particular, I would think this would stand out for me with Bursting. Like, you finish off a pack in Mythic Plus, Bursting is going off, it's nuking your team, your healer's struggling to keep everybody alive, and obviously you've just killed them, hence, Bursting. You've just killed the mobs. You don't really need to tank anymore. You could pop in every 1 minute, you could pop out, become a 30% stronger Resto Affinity healer, throw out that wild growth, throw out some rejuve, some swift mend, and really help top your team up and save your team. How cool is that? With Feral Affinity, again, just to show you guys, Feral Affinity, it's going to increase the damage of your Feral abilities by 30%, blah, blah, blah. Again, you could use this in Raid, right? In Raid, you could just turn into a cat and super duper nuke the boss for those 10 seconds every minute. So regularly with your tank swaps, you can turn into this Uber Cat and do loads of damage. Or you could turn into the Uber Moonkin and again, do loads of damage. I think the potential of this is phenomenal. Really, really cool. Wonderful passive effects, and I love the shape-shifting effects. I think it's just interesting. So phenomenal legendary there. One of my favorites across all the classes in the game. It's so good. For your bear-specific ones, though, if you just love being a bear, want to make your bear better. Okay, first up we have Ursoc's Lingering Spirit. In bear form, Thrash has a 15% chance to trigger an additional Thrash. So pretty nice, right? Your Thrash is going to help you stack up that bleed faster, which is cool. It's going to generate an extra 5 rage, which is cool. It's passive, it just works, which is nice. And that does have some interesting combos. So for example, Blood Frenzy. It's going to get you a little bit of extra rage with Blood Frenzy, which is kind of nice. It will synergize with, not with that one, it will synergize with Earth Warden. When you deal direct damage at Thrash, get a charge of Earth Warden. You'll get extra charges of Earth Warden. With Rend and Tear, each stack of Thrash is going to give you damage reduction, more damage. So again, helping you stack up the Thrash more. It will help with that. If you go Pulverize, it will help you rebuild your Thrash faster for Pulverize. Get better uptime on the Thrash. So I think it's a decent one. Not too bad. Passive, but kind of good. And obviously it does a bit of AoE damage, which is nice for some AoE threat. Pretty good. Legacy of the Sleeper, I already mentioned this one because this one is so nice. Berserk in bear form is going to give you now 25% more damage, 15% leech, and immunity to loss of control effects. It also reduces the cooldown by 30 seconds. So right now this does not work with Incarnation, which sucks, right? Doesn't work with Incarnation, only with the baseline Berserk. Only the baseline Berserk. It's still good. It's going to let you spam out Mangles, and those Mangles are going to do a lot of damage, heal you for a lot, which is cool. If this works with Incarnation, this is where this gets really dirty, where it becomes this 30-second buff where your Mangle is cleaving up to 3 targets, and you're going to be doing more 25% more damage at that, healing for 15% of that, and being immune to loss of control effects for 30 seconds every 2.5 minutes, in fact, with this, because it reduced the cooldown. That's where it could get really good. Again, doesn't work right now. Right now, it only works with Berserk. But presuming that this does work with Incarnation, I think this could be really good. And, of course, unfortunately, the cooldown reduction doesn't work with the Venthyr thing at all. But the Venthyr Covenant ability is that big stacking damage, haste, and healing buff every 3 minutes that lasts for 20 seconds. If these things all work together, you could go with the Incarnation, get that 30-second Incarnation, which is now doing way more stuff. The loss of control effect removes the risk of the Venthyr Covenant. And you can just stack... like the Uber Bear. It's just I find it hilarious that, it's like the ultimate tanking cooldown. This will give you everything. It gives you loads of damage, loads of leech. It's going to give you maximum health. It's going to give you more Iron Furs. It's going to give you everything. More generation, stacking damage haste. Like pop those things together. It's going to be nuts. So hopefully it will work. This one is going to be awesome. I think it's a real reason to like playing your bear is that you become the Uber Bear. That's cool. Luffa Infused Embrace is next. Thrash does 20% more damage, has a 30% increased radius, and can stack an additional time. So in some of those longer fights, this could be kind of nice. It's easier to apply it. The damage increase is okay, and certainly extra stacks is kind of nice too. Going to work well with Rend and Tear, for example. You get up to 8% increased damage and damage reduction instead of 6%. Maybe a little bit slow to stack it up, although something like, for example, Convoke the Spirits would help you stack that very quickly, so I think it's a decent option. And then finally, this one is really nice. I was running this in the dungeon myself. It's super good. The Natural Order's Will. Barkskin will reduce damage by an additional 15%, and when it begins or ends in bear form, you gain Iron Fur and Frenzied Regen. So I use this one, as you can see, it's in my equipment set called Bear. It's phenomenal, right? So with Survival of the Fittest, and there's actually a Conduit as well, that makes this even better. This gets even better. But even ignoring Conduits, just taking Survival of the Fittest, Barkskin's a 40-second cooldown. That's a 40-second cooldown. I pop this on, and I get a 35% damage reduction for 12 seconds on a 40-second cooldown. Yeah, I like it. I like it. And on top of that, I get a free Iron Fur when this starts and when it expires. I get a free Frenzied Regen when it starts and expires. Like, Frenzied Regen is a 33-second recharge. I'm going to get 2 Frenzied Regens for free with my Barkskin on a 40-second cooldown. It's phenomenal. This is so good. Like, what an insanely good defensive legendary. But yeah, I mean, yeah, wow. This is the thing. I think Guardian Druid has some phenomenal legendaries. I think the general ones, these ones are okay-ish. Definitely the appealing ones, though, are these ones. I think the gameplay that you can have with these is so intriguing with your shapeshifting. I absolutely love that. I love it with all the Druid specs. Phenomenal legendaries there. I think the Guardian specific ones are pretty okay too. You know, more Thrashes is nice. Legacy of the Sleeper is incredible. The Uber Bear, gotta love it. You know, Luffa's Infused Embrace is kind of again a bit of a slower one, not a standout, but it's still solid. It's still gonna be solid, I think. And then the Natural Order's Will is just, wow, what a big increase to your survivability. It's just nuts. So this is a standout thing for Guardian Druid. I would certainly highlight Lycara's Fleeting Glimpse, Oath of the Elder Druid, Legacy of the Sleeper, and Natural Order's Will as being these massively gameplay affecting legendaries. Some specs, like, go look at the Demon Hunter, my goodness, like, their legendaries are bloody miserable. They are miserable for the most part. Vengeance not as bad as Havoc, but like, some specs have awful legendaries. You've got some absolute bangers, though, is the Guardian Druid. And that's a big reason to play Guardian, I think. Like, you will love playing with each of these legendaries. If they ever let you equip multiple legendaries in Shadowlands at some point, the Guardian Druid is looking dope as well. You're going to benefit from that so much. So yeah, pretty nice legendaries there. For your Conduits then, as the Guardian Druid, these will slot into your Soulbind trees. You'll see an example in the background of sort of the path you could take through your Soulbind tree and the slots that you could unlock along the way. There are Endurance Conduits, which boost your survivability, Finesse Conduits, which boost your utility, and Potency, which are going to boost your damage or healing. Let's look at the Endurance ones first. These are the big highlight for the Guardian Druid, of course. The first one is another banger. This is Tough as Bark, that will reduce Barkskin's cooldown by 10%. That scales up to 24% cooldown reduction. So you've got an absolutely insane build there. If you combo this with your talent that reduces Barkskin's cooldown, so that's already bringing it to a 40-second cooldown. This probably brings it to a 30-second cooldown, and then you slap on your legendary that is going to boost up its power. You get a free Iron Fur, a free Frenzied Regen at the start and end of Barkskin, and it also increases the damage reduction from 20% up to 35%. You're going to have a 35% damage reduction cooldown on a 30-second cooldown with this, with all those stuff stacked together, and you get a free Iron Fur and Frenzied Regen at the start and end of it. Absolutely nuts. Like, you're going to be a tanking machine with all that stuff. So this one is looking good. Looking really, even on its own, even if you don't take those things, it's still good. Cooldown reduction on Barkskin, still wonderful. So yeah, it's a winner. Earthsign Vigor is next. For 4 seconds after shifting into bear form, your health and armor are increased by 12%. That goes up to 28%. Not all that useful, seeing as you're in bear form most of the time. I believe that one of the uses for this would be, you know, at the start of a pull in Mythic Plus, it takes a while, for example, for you to get your defensive benefits rolling. So you need to generate Rage to get your Iron Fur up. This just helps you with that initial pull. Like, if you're going into some, like, a mob pack or a boss pack and you don't want to use a cooldown on pull. I mean, again, like, if you got that bloody 30-second Barkskin, like, whatever, pop the Barkskin going in, you're totally fine. But if you're not running that sort of stuff, this could be pretty good, you know, as just a way to make your pull a little bit easier. So that's maybe okay. Innate Resolve is next. Regrowth and Frenzied Regen healing is increased by 12% on yourself. That goes up to about 28% increased healing. Not too bad. It's a bit niche where you're going to be spamming Regrowth on yourself as the Guardian Druid, but hey, that makes it a bit better. Obviously, you use Frenzied Regen quite a bit. It is worth noting, of course, that the Frenzied Regen healing is slightly lowered. But I think it's still a decent one, you know, a bit more healing. It could be okay. I just don't know if it's going to be as standout as the other Endurance Conduits, but it could end up being a good option. We'll see what the actual number tuning ends up being and run through the sim, see how useful it is. For the Guardian Druid Endurance Conduits, right, these are specific. These two are specific to Guardian Druid. First up, you have Layered Mane. Iron Fur has an 8% chance to apply 2 stacks. That goes up to a 19% chance to apply 2 stacks. That is amazing. You can never have too much Iron Fur, right? You can never have too much Iron Fur. You cast Iron Fur quite frequently. You're going to get good procs out of this. This is going to be a very consistent increase to your survivability. So I think this one looks really good. Then the next one is Well-Honed Instincts. When you fall below 25% health, you cast Frenzied Regen for free, automatically. This can happen once every 90 seconds, but that's pretty bad. But it does scale up, and at max rank, this conduit can trigger once every 37.5 seconds. That starts to become more useful. Again, it's going to pop that Frenzied Regen when you need it most, which I think is pretty good, giving you just 20% more healing as well from like your healers. Not bad at all. So yeah, I think this one could be okay. Again, it's pretty rubbish, I think, at the start. You know, every 90 seconds, it's not a very good benefit. Like, Frenzied Regen is not strong enough to make that really stand out. But once it can pop every 37 seconds, that's going to be an awful lot of extra added safety for, you know, Mythic Plus or progress rates, that sort of thing. So I think that's a pretty big win. For your Finesse Conduits, there are 4. The first one is Born Anew. Rebirth will grant the target 50% move speed for 8 seconds, and Well Fed, increasing their primary stat by 20 for 1 hour. That goes up to a primary stat buff of 48 for an hour. It's okay. You know, obviously, you resing your teammate is certainly something. It's a big part of the utility you can bring to a group as a Guardian Druid. And obviously, you're the tank. You're probably in the most dangerous part of the fight. So giving your party member movement speed to get the hell out of there is a pretty nice perk. But yeah, it's just the question is going to be, are you going to give up one of your precious conduit slots to something that only helps your friends instead of helping you? How generous are you? That's the question. So I'm not really sure. Front of the pack is next. Stampeding Roar's radius and duration are increased by 15%. That goes up to 36%. So that's pretty awesome, actually. Stampeding Roar on the 1 minute cooldown for Guardian Druid is a real perk of it. I had so much fun, you know, in doing dungeon content. I just, between every pack, you're doing your roar and you're like, let's go, guys, let's go. It just felt like such a bear thing to do. So I think this one does tie in well, and it could be pretty nifty. Maybe not something you run all the time, but it could be pretty damn cool. Born of the Wilds is next. The cooldown of Mighty Bash, Mass Entangle, and Heart of the Wild are reduced by 10%. That can go up to 24% cooldown reduction. This is a maybe. I don't know that these abilities are strong enough for that to be useful. I don't know if you'll have enough opportunities as the Guardian Druid in particular to make use of Heart of the Wild, whereas, for example, something like a Resto Druid could really make use out of this on Heart of the Wild to do some damage, like whatever. So not sure if that's going to be all that useful. It's certainly, you know, it's more crowd control, it's more utility that you can reduce the cooldown of. It might be okay. I'm not sure. And finally, Tireless Pursuit. For 2 seconds after leaving cat form or travel form, you retain the movement speed bonus. That goes up to 4.8 seconds after leaving cat or travel form. So this is decent-ish, I suppose. I'm not sure if it's going to be all that useful. Like, you're already pretty quick as the bear, like Stampeding Roar between pulls and Mythic Plus and charging in. I don't know. Like, I'm not sure that you're going to need this. It might be okay. I feel like this is more of a PvP thing. I'm like, if I'm a flag carrier in raided battlegrounds, I think this is really nice. I can hop between cat form and bear form and get loads of movement speed. I'm not sure if it's a PvE thing all that much, though. Maybe sometimes, but not that much, I don't think. For your potency conduits, then, as the Guardian Druid, there's only 2, because, of course, you've got the 2 extra endurance conduits. That's really where your interests lie. However, Savage Combatant is here. Mangle will increase the damage of your next Maul by 10%, stacking up to 3 times, with 24% more damage. I guess it's a reason to like pressing Maul, but Maul is pretty shit. Let's be real, it's pretty bad. Maul kind of sucks. If they take Maul off the GCD, which they should, Blizzard GCD, remove Frenzied Regen and Maul from GCD, that would be good. This could feel better then. I think it's a fun effect. I just don't know if you'll bother taking this versus taking your endurance conduits, which are really good. And then you have the Unchecked Aggression. where you gain 10% haste during Berserk. Now we're talking. Now we're talking. This goes up to 24% more haste. The Uber Bear! Uber Bear is here. Oh my lord. So, again, if this only works right now with Berserk, but again, the appeal would be if this works with Incarnation and you stack this Conduit with Legacy of the Sleeper, with Incarnation, with Ravenous Frenzy, my goodness, you're the Uber Bear. It's terrifying. Like, you're probably gonna out DPS some bloody DPS classes for that while being borderline unkillable. I just think that's hilarious. I want this to be a thing so bad. I just think it's such a fun identity for the bear. The Uber Bear. Yeah, I like it. I like it. So I think this one actually looks fairly decent, though a bit dependent on how it works with talents and legendaries and stuff like that. So there you are. They're the conduits for the bear. So there you are, guys. They are all the different pieces of the Guardian Druid on the Shadowlands beta. Question then is, how's it playing? Is it fun? Is it a good tank? Is it a spec that you could enjoy playing? Well, you know, I went into this, and certainly I think the community perception that I've certainly received from a lot of other people is that Guardian Bear kind of sucks, and it's bad and it's boring, and why would you play Guardian Druid? And having played the spec and looked at all these parts that hopefully you've been looking at with me in this video, I actually disagree with that quite a lot. I think the Guardian Druid is an enjoyable tank, and I think it's also a very, very solid tank. It may not be the best tank in the entire game. It may not, you know, stand out in the raid as much as maybe a Brewmaster might, and the sort of utility that they bring to the raid. It might not stand out as much in the dungeons, you know, especially if Resto Druid is the best healer, it might not be as good. You might want, you know, again, a tank that brings different utility than the Druid utility. That being said, this is a really solid tank. This is going to do the job. I think this perception that Guardian Druid is bad is really unwarranted. Like, you can succeed with this for sure in the dungeons, and you're going to, yeah, it's going to be good. Now, I'm going to sell this idea to you. I'm going to sell two ideas to you here, because I think the legendaries in particular are opening you up to some really interesting gameplay styles as the Guardian Druid. I think that there are two things in here that can sell being a Druid to you, that can make you feel awesome as a... on top of the fact that you have Stampeding Roar and a 1 minute cooldown, that's one of the most fun things as the Druid. It's just roaring and zipping around between packs. That's quite fun. In fact, you know what? I told a lie. There's actually three things. I've got three things here to sell Guardian Druid to you. The first one, I've already been singing its praises a bit in this video, but it is the legend of the Uber Bear. The Uber Bear is here. The new Berserk cooldown that you have baseline, a 3 minute cooldown, where you go Berserk for 15 seconds. It's going to massively reduce the cooldown of basically all of your good attacks, half the cost of your Iron Fur, your main source of armor, of active mitigation, and really reduce the cooldown of Frenzied Regen as well. That's great. You can stack that up then, again, presuming these things are going to work. You can stack that up with Incarnation, Guardian of Ursoc, which is going to extend that buff to 30 seconds and give you 30% more max health, and make your Mangle, your main single target, you know, damage dealer, hit 3 targets instead of just 1. Stack that with a Legacy of the Sleeper legendary, where Berserk is going to give you 25% increased damage, 15% leech, and total immunity to all crowd control. And then you stack that with the Venthyr Covenant ability, the Ravenous Frenzy, which again, another 3 minute cooldown, which is going to give you a stacking damage, healing, and haste buff. And also with the Conduit, stacking critical strike. And you stack that with your other Conduit, which can give you 25% haste during Berserk. Again, the issue is whether or not they're going to work. I presume they will. Some of these effects don't affect Incarnation, which is the bummer here. They only affect Berserk, but presumably seeing as Guardian Incarnation replaces Berserk, they will work when Blizzard gets around to fixing it. But like, you put all those things together, and every 3 minutes for like 30 seconds, you become the Uber Bear. You become the best tank in the entire game. You're going to do so much damage and be so unbelievably tanky. It's just going to be incredible, and I think that's a wonderful feeling. It's a reason to play Guardian, is that you know that, you know, for 30 seconds out of every 3 minutes, you're just a god. You're a god. Like, forget like whatever this paladin boosted up by the light and whatever. Like, forget this warrior who's trained with his weapons his whole life and is a great fighter, or like demon hunters who are, you know, emo. They listen to emo music and they're powered up. You're just a big old bear. And you are the best tank in the game. You are the Uber Bear. I think that's awesome. I think another reason, though, to play Guardian Druid, is another legendary that points towards this, which is the Natural Order's Will, where Barkskin is going to give you free Iron Fur, free Frenzied Regen, and Barkskin, when it begins and ends, so you get 2 free Iron Furs and 2 free Frenzied Regens with every Barkskin. It also increases Barkskin's damage reduction from 20% to 35%. And you stack that on top of the fact that with your Survival of the Fittest talent, Barkskin has a 40-second cooldown. And then you stack that on top of the Conduit, that's going to reduce Barkskin's cooldown by another 25%. And you've got this absolutely nutty defensive ability in Barkskin, just awesomely powerful on a 30-second cooldown. So strong. That is so good. So I think that is a massive reason, again, to play the Guardian Druid. Again, you go with that build, you go with this legendary, and you just have these awesomely powerful. You become so tanky, and it's so easy to play it as well. You just press Barkskin and you're just this awesome tank, and it's got a really short cooldown. So I don't know, they might even, I suspect they might nerf this stuff. It seems a bit too good right now. It seems a bit too good, but I think that's super appealing. And then the third thing is tying in with the general Druid fantasy, right? It's tying in with that general Druid fantasy where you've got your affinities, and with the Heart of the Wild talent, your new talent, where at the 5-minute cooldown, empower your affinity and become like a really good damage dealer in cat form, a really good healer in resto form, or again, a good range damage dealer with balance affinity. I think that's a good reason to play the Guardian Druid, and that's a cool thing to bring to Mythic, not to Mythic Plus, really to raids, right? As an off tank, you can do awesome stuff. You can be a really good damage dealer as an off tank with that cooldown. More importantly, though, it's really tying in with the your legendaries that are also going to enhance that, the general Druid legendaries. The one I will highlight here in particular is the Oath of the Elder Druid, which is giving you just big passive benefits to your damage reduction. It's going to give you an extra 4% damage reduction passively through Thick Hide, which is great. But the big thing is that it's going to give you that Heart of the Wild boost to your affinity form for 10 seconds every 1 minute. So every time you tank swap in the raid, like every minute, when you tank swap away and you're not tanking, if you go like with Feral Affinity, you can become a really good damage dealer for that 10 seconds and really output a lot of damage, a lot of burst damage. Same thing with Balance Affinity, or become like a good healer to help out for, 10 seconds every minute. That's cool. Or again, to really help with bursting in Mythic Plus, right? You kill a mob pack, your healer's desperately trying to deal with bursting, you shift into your Resto Druid form and into your human form, and with this legendary, just become a really, really good off healer. I think that sort of stuff is really cool. So there you go. I'm trying to sell this because I really, really like the bear. It's been a spec that everybody told me I shouldn't like, but I actually really like it. I really like it. I think it's solid. I think people kind of hate it because, it's oftentimes not been the top spec. I mean, it was top spec for a while in Legion, for example, but for most of BFA, I don't think it's ever been like the #1 spec, so it doesn't really get the spotlight. And then I think people are a bit biased about it because, being a bear might not seem that cool to some people. But I don't know. I hope with those 3 things, I've sort of sold you the Guardian Druid a little bit. Like I said, I don't expect it to be the top tank. But maybe it will be. You never know. But I think that there are several good reasons to want to play this. And like I said, I think it's a straightforward and powerful class that's gonna serve you well in all sorts of content, so long as the community doesn't get on a bear hating train. We'll have to see. I think it's really good and it has some awesome parts to it. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is the Guardian Druid. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.